Natalie Kunsman, MD, and today we're going to learn how to control your appetite. This is not really a discussion on all the non-hunger triggers that make us eat, such as scheduled eating, the timing of eating, visual triggers, compulsive eating, and compulsive drinking. We actually have these hunger hormones, and if you can refer to a previous discussion on these hunger hormones, you can get some of those details with that lecture. So we've got ghrelin, insulin, and yes, insulin is a hunger hormone, cortisol, glucagon, and all of those will signal the body that it's hungry. But then we have CCK, PYY, leptin, adiponectin, GLP-1, oxyntomodulin, and that's secreted in the colon. That's a newer one that we've discovered. And all of those will signal that we are satisfied. Now, these hunger hormones might be secreted from the gut, the fat cells, or the brain, depending upon which ones we are talking about. We are going to see a lot more information in the upcoming years on OEA, which is oleyoethanolamine. And that's a metabolite, interestingly, of olive oil, but it is actually produced by us, every man and woman, in very small quantities in the small intestinal tract, and that's part of our endocannabinoid system. And the function of the naturally produced OEA in the small intestine is to send satiety signals that we are satisfied from our gut to the brain, and it regulates the metabolism of our body fat. So how can we actually affect these hunger hormones, which in the end will help us control our appetite? One of the first ones, believe it or not, is coffee. So coffee can help us modulate some of these hunger hormones. There is Yerba mate, and that behaves as a GLP-1 agonist, glucagon-like protein agonist. There is Garcinia cambogia, and several years ago, one of the more popular ones was Hoodia gordonii. We also have CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, and I use that a lot in my practice because of its real natural properties with very minimal side effects. Another great one is green tea extract, which is EGCG as the active component that helps with that. There is an herb from India, Caralluma fimbriata, and that affects the hunger hormones by increasing serotonin levels. And while we're talking about serotonin, you actually can get 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin, and you can get that in a supplemental form. We have Gymnema sylvestre, and I will actually use that for a lot of my diabetics or pre-diabetics, since it is a fantastic insulin sensitizer. The herb saffron has had some benefits. The herb sage has had some benefits. And again, this list that I previously gave is not all inclusive, but some of the bigger ones. So those were some very great herbal strategies and natural strategies to help us affect those hunger hormones. Now, in the pharmaceutical market, there are some newer diabetic medications that came out to the market to capitalize on these hunger hormones and help the diabetic patient work on dietary control. So for those of you out there, you may be familiar with Ozempic or Trulicity, Bydureon, and all of those behave as GLP-1 agonists. Now, an agonist means it will promote or be pro. So it will be very similar to a GLP-1. Now, there are some other ways to control appetite through the pharmaceutical company, and there have been a lot of stimulants and amphetamines in the market throughout the years. But now we have some newer strategies trying to capitalize on that as well. And Wellbutrin, and some of these same stimulants are on the market, and low dose naltrexone. And interestingly, this isn't necessarily working on some of the hunger hormones per se, but it is working on the pituitary area, which affects the reward center, and it works best with hedonic eating. Now, hedonic, think of that word, we're talking about hedonism. This is actually an eating style that is for pleasure. So there are people who overeat that are not necessarily having defects in their hunger hormones and hunger per se, but they have a lot of trouble with the hedonic eating or eating for pleasure only. So these medicines will help by going after the reward center and blocking that, since a lot of people are using food as a reward, and this will work on some of those areas to control that. And again, this is some of the newer upcoming information regarding why some of us overeat. So back to potentially what we eat as helping to control our appetite. And these may be intuitive, but I will state that increasing your water intake may help you with your appetite control. Eating foods that are higher in protein, which will also affect these hunger hormones in a much more sustained fashion without some of the highs and lows of the cortisol and the insulin. High fiber foods have a similar property in what the proteins will do, and they will actually distend the small bowel and the colon, which can also modulate some of those triggers that we've discussed. Also, we need to be heavy on our spices, because that is very palatable and gives us a lot of satisfaction with our eating, and then we can eat in lesser quantity and have the equal satisfaction. Smaller plating actually works, using smaller plates for those meals, and some of that will actually go after our visual triggers. And to that note, using bigger forks has had about a 10% reduction in some of our caloric intake, and people with bigger forks eat less calories. Exercise. This is imperative not only to burn calories, but it can affect the hunger hormones, and a lot of times it will suppress the hunger hormones and give an increased sense of satiety. Improving sleep. This is something that is necessary for nearly all of our conditions in our body, and our appetite is no exception. Lowering stress. Now, lowering stress will lower cortisol. Lowered cortisol will lower our hunger drive. Visualization is a very interesting approach, in which if you are visualizing yourself eating some of that snack type food or some of that very highly rewarding food, just visualizing you eat it will actually have you already tricking your body into thinking you've already eaten those desired foods, and then you have no real desire to eat it. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of the energetic fixes for our appetite, and there's actually acupressure points that can help with appetite. And I subscribe to energy work, but I am not an energy work specialist, so I am hoping some of you energy workers can comment on some of these acupressure points and your success with them. Color therapy, very interesting. The color blue will decrease the appetite. So there are some strategies to use blue plates, a blue tablecloth, or maybe even making sure that your kitchen is painted blue, and that can actually help. So what is the stimulatory color? Well, that is red. So red environments can stimulate appetite. On to some breathing techniques. And if you do some breathing techniques on a consistent basis, you can actually help with your appetite control. So there is diaphragmatic breathing, there is belly breathing, mouth breathing, and shining the skull breathing. So there you have it. We have many different ways to affect our appetite, and the core reason they are working is some of those inherent appetite and hunger hormones that we have within our system. We've got the biochemical control in a natural way and a pharmaceutical way, as well as energy and breathing techniques, which of course I subscribe to since I'm an integrative physician. Again, I'm Natalie Kunsman, MD. Please subscribe to my channel below, and until we meet again, be well.